Trade Efficiency with NACFE's Mike Roth and Friends.
In episode 75, we're joined by Cristina Commendatore, editor-in-chief at Fleet Owner, where she shares the unique place Fleet Owner occupies in the trucking industry media, the role of a trucking journalist, and about her career path. She also comments on how she thinks NACFE is doing, the opportunities in the trucking industry, why it's a great place for young people to work, and the progress the industry has made in the areas of diversity and inclusion. Today we have joining us Cristina Commendatore. She's editor-in-chief of Fleet Owner magazine, and I'm just really thrilled to talk with you today, Cristina. We communicate at least weekly, and but it's really good to chat with you.
We do, and yes, I am thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah, we titled this podcast Freight Efficiency with NACFE's Mike Roth and Friends. So, all right, the big question I ask every time, how did we become friends? Do you remember?
So first of all, I'm incredibly honored that you even think of me as a friend, because you're frankly one of the coolest people that I've met in this industry. So I'm just happy that you think of me that way.
Careful. I use these podcasts to make my head bigger, even bigger. So be careful.
So I'll talk kind of a little bit about how I think first initially met. We met back in 2015 when I first started working at Fleet Owner as the associate editor at the time, and Jim Mealy was the editor-in-chief. So I just remember him telling me a lot about you and that you were just this great unbiased resource who had an engineering background, which, I thought was pretty cool. So you and I just really we talked at shows just briefly, mainly just in interviews, things like that. But I don't remember us really hitting it off as friends, maybe until about 2 years ago. So I want to say that it was at that Shell dinner in Nashville during ATA. Is that correct? Maybe.
Yeah, I think that's probably correct. I'm guessing Letty was along.
She was. So we sat across from each other, and Letty and I just really hit it off. And she and I talked about every single thing that you could think of under the sun. I think we were just talking about wine and love and loss and friendship, and the conversation just kind of took a very personal turn, and you chimed in a few times, and then after that I think that's when you and I really developed more of this friendship that we have today. So I say, all the credit goes to Letty.
And I think you're the first to admit it, but I think I've got a lot of industry friends that I came by because Letty was a friend first. You're the first to admit it, so it's good.
You're so outgoing and wonderful.
Yeah, there you go. I blog on Fleet Owner every week, and you have a thing called Idea Exchange, and just first of all, thank you for letting us put our thoughts out there. And but I looked back, it shocked me when I did. The first blog was in August of 2014. My goodness, it's 8.5 years ago, and I think we're right around 400. And so, geez, I just look at that, and Denise Rondini helps me put those thoughts together each week, and can't believe I've had something to say 400 different times.
So it's funny that you say that, because I actually remember Jim Mealy when I was coming on saying that they had just started these Idea Exchange blogs, and I think you were one of the first ones, and your column really has been a big hit most weeks. And I think last year when we did our top 10 roundup for the end of 2022, your Tesla semi column was number 1, and then your Salute to Truck Drivers column came in at number 5. So I like that you focus on the events that NACFE is focusing on in the industry, but you also take the time to talk about other things too. You had a column on kind of all of us getting back out on the road after the pandemic with time to pack your bags, and that was a cool one that had a lot of engagement. So it's funny which ones get the most engagement. Sometimes they're the ones that you don't necessarily think would, but they're successful.
Yeah, and so we try to, we're pretty intentional on being a little, I call it with the NACFE team, be edgy in our blogging and in some of our presentations and so forth. I mean, we're going to be less edgy or more intentional with our reports and some of our, more detailed stuff. But no, again, thanks for that. So walk us through Fleet Owner. I mean, sort of the history? What's your, the magazine, and I don't even call it a magazine anymore. I mean, how do we describe it? But tell us about, the unique place that it sits in, the trucking industry media world.
For sure. I mean, Fleet Owner has been around for 95 years as a print publication. So the very first issue was published in 1928. And we still do print. So I would say that we are first and foremost a magazine. But in the beginning, the publication really covered everything from the boom of the trucking industry in the 1920s to deregulation, and then the Motor Carrier Safety Act of 1984 to ELDs, and now everything going on with emissions regulations and the push toward decarbonization efforts. So Fleet Owner now is part of Endeavor Business Media's commercial vehicle group, and we still serve commercial truck fleet executives and operations managers. We still do publish that print magazine, like I said, but most of our day-to-day work now is really on our website and focusing on growing our audience engagement. So we just unleashed a new video series called the Fleet Owner Pre-Trip. That's headed up by our executive editor, Josh Fisher, who you know very well. And we'd love to have you as a guest, by the way. So just gonna put that out there. And, down the road, I'm hoping that we can get more of a podcast going. We have so many ideas, but I need to rein it in a bit because every day I feel like I have a new idea that pops into my head. So I need to sit down with my team and people like Josh kind of bring me back down to reality. So
a lot of us blog, a lot of us, make comments. Any of us can tweet or put a LinkedIn post out with a picture. I might be at a truck show and can do that. I mean, how do you in the press, the traditional trucking media, view us? I mean, I gotta believe there's times where, we're out there making statements and doing things that you got to look at us and go, wait a minute, that's not good journalism. They haven't thought this through or that through. I mean, just kind of give us some insight from your side, how storytelling and reporting is going with so many people actively doing it through social media.
So I think our role as traditional journalists is to provide an unbiased look at all sides. So what we try to accomplish in our stories and, a lot of our more in-depth features is trying to get a lot of different voices in there so that we could tell that story that we feel is objective and that our end user, so the fleet executive or manager, could use to help them run their day-to-day operations, things like that. So that's our objective at Fleet Owner. And I think I don't want to speak for the rest of my trucking journalist friends, but I feel the same way. There's a lot of vetting, there's a lot of fact checking. If someone posts something on a blog that looks outlandish, verifying that. The New York Times did a story, I think last year, in 2022, on training and why there's such a huge training problem in the industry, but they only talked to the people who were being harassed or had all of these issues, and they didn't really get the other side. So we just try to give the whole broader view.
How are we doing as an organization when you are out there talking to a lot of the players, whether they're fleets or manufacturers or even in the, regulators and, trucking associations, et cetera? I mean, you want to give us a grade or at least tell us how you think we're doing or what we should be doing more of?
Well, I would give you guys an A. I think that when I think of NACFE, I think of realistic guidance for just sustainable trucking and cleaner freight movement. So you're really great at giving fleets that starting point to reducing fuel consumption. And maybe those who are thinking about beginning their zero emissions journey, they should really come to you. As a journalist, I rely on your confidence reports and your guidance reports when I'm covering anything related to zero emissions technology. I'm currently working on a story on near zero emissions for long haul. So I will be utilizing one of your guidance reports that is coming out on hydrogen. So you really excel at getting those real world perspectives from fleets and that are, those data driven perspectives. And also, from the drivers who had to overcome some challenges and had success in this work, which is really new and uncharted territory for a lot of us right now.
I'm hesitant. I say this a lot. I'm hesitant to call this a transformation because it's kind of easy to think that, the challenges we have right now are, no one's ever had before. But, oftentimes, we can look at history and the change is a lot smaller than that, than maybe we think when we're in the throes of it. But boy, I tell you, the more we get into battery electric trucks, hydrogen, fuel cell and hydrogen engines, and what's going on in the renewable space with natural gas and diesel and so forth, and how we're going to respond to not only the sustainability drive of the public and the planet and boardrooms, but also the regulations that that are upon us. So I do think we're in a transformation, and so I think that makes our collective work more important.
Yeah, and I think the only reason, I give you an A rather than an A plus is that I do believe that since you used to work for a truck OEM, that some unbiased just thought leadership on how OEMs are really ramping up their efforts to meet these more stringent regulations that are coming down the pike and that are here today, I think would be really helpful coming from NACFE. And selfishly, it would help me out too. And, selfishly as a journalist, when you do press conferences at TMC, if you could bring like a fleet or a driver to come along with you to chat with the media, that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really good point. I mean, people oftentimes describe NACFE as a fleet organization, and we've always said that our first audience are the fleets who are making decisions on, do I buy low rolling resistance tires or aerodynamics, or how do I get into electric trucks? And so they are our first audience, but we've always been quick to say that, we're going to work with the entire industry, and the whole industry is an audience. But I think we can be more direct with what different parts of the industry should do. At TMC this year, I said very bluntly, and this is an example of what we probably don't do enough of, but I said very bluntly that, the truck builders need to behave with respect to really bringing the best technology, the best truck to each fleet user and the individual, trucks and routes that they're operating in. We can't, diesel's been very forgiving, and that we can put a diesel truck into a lot of applications. Now to really be winners in this new world of powertrains, we got to make sure that the customers that should be using natural gas, the truck builders are suggesting that and moving forward, and not trying to, sell them something that they think they might want or whatever. So I appreciate that. Tell us about you. I mean, how did you get? I always get a kick out of how we get to where we are in our careers, particularly with people who are, I guess, passionate as you are with trucking and journalism and so forth. So walk us through how you got to this and why trucking for a career.
Sure. I initially got my start in journalism in 2008. I was working for a weekly newspaper in Connecticut called the Middlebury Bee Intelligencer. After that, I worked for the daily newspaper a little bit in the area. I covered everything from town politics, police, fire, education, town budgets, and all the local happenings in the community. I attended journalism school during that time, so I was getting that kind of real world experience, which was pretty cool. And then I went on to another brand of community newspapers before really starting my first job in B2B, which was at Fleet Owner in 2015. And I took a little bit of a break for about 2 years from Fleet Owner to go cover the waste and recycling industry. And I helped put on the Waste Expo show, which was very cool. But then when I had the opportunity to come back here to Fleet Owner, it was a no-brainer, because I just feel like at this point now, trucking and transportation is in my blood. So I'm here to stay.
I did a time in the refuse business when I was at International, and I remember going to a number of waste expos. So it's the cleanest garbage truck you'll ever be around are at Waste Expo.
Oh, well, yeah, absolutely. But even the ones in my neighborhood, they're so cool with the automatic arms. And, I
Yeah.
always look at them and you don't have the safety issue anymore of handlers riding on the back of the truck because there were so many fatalities, clearly, when that was happening. So it's cool to see the technology and automation even there, in that segment. I feel that working in this industry is very fulfilling. And whether it's here at Fleet Owner or anywhere else, just the lasting friendship and connections that I've made. All the industry journalists too, as you know, we're a pretty tight-knit group. And it's just this industry with everything that you mentioned too, with the technology and the innovation, it's just so easy to fall in love with because it really is so collaborative and everyone works so hard and everyone is passionate, and you can just feel the passion when you talk to people. Even when I'm interviewing a new person, I feel like I learn something new every single day. And this industry is one where you can start out doing one thing and then you could end up doing something totally different still within the industry. And I love that aspect of it. So
Yeah, I really get that. And I think that that definitely exists. And that's good for the audience of this podcast. We have a lot of people who are new to the trucking industry. Whether they came into it at, we got a lot of startups, we got a lot of investors, we have state and federal regulators that are starting to work on trucks that never have before. So the audience is kind of new. So
I do think that this is an industry that it's just a great place for young people too, who maybe don't know what they want and don't necessarily think of our industry at all as a viable career path, but it really is. And it's so much fun. And yeah, I wouldn't recommend it, any more than I already have. I can't.
yeah, so I had it on my list of possible questions for you. So you're taking me there. I mean, how do you view diversity and inclusion? I mean, I remember, for the trucking industry, and it wasn't that many years ago, maybe 20 years, 10 years, where most meetings I was in, most industry events I was at, it was a white men's trucking industry, and boy, it sure feels different. The data is starting to show that. I think women in trucking say that we're at 13% women truck drivers. I saw some data from recently around, C-suite trucking companies, whether they're manufacturers or so forth, for women, minorities now in truck driving. I think minorities are now a majority. It just feels like we're making a lot of good progress. Now, I think our starting point, compared with maybe other industries, was, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, farther behind. But I'm seeing that show up in, I think, better decisions, better discussions. What are you seeing?
I agree that the industry has made a great deal of progress over the last decade or so. I also appreciate too that the federal government kind of has stepped in with FMCSA Women of Trucking Advisory Board. I think that that's a really crucial initiative to help shed light on some of the ongoing issues that still occur, for women in the industry. So,
Yep.
Some harassment and some of those training issues that maybe I broached on just a little bit earlier. When it comes to diversity and inclusion overall, I see that fleets really are making it a point to be intentional about those inclusion efforts, which is fantastic. And I also give credit too to, newer groups and the grassroots organizations like the Next Generation in Trucking, and co-founder, Lindsay Trent, she's doing so much work to advocate for more career-based technical education in middle schools and high schools around the country. And I think that helps too, just driving that diversity and inclusion and attracting more young talent into our industry. It's just, I really like to see that, diversity inclusion is kind of just becoming implemented into the culture overall.
Right.
And it's just, something that needs to keep on happening, and that we just all really need to be intentional about and mindful of.
Yeah, another thing that I, along these lines, that I find interesting is, we all are quick to talk about how much we love the industry and how interesting it is and so forth. But and we're seeing less of what I would have called, a number of years ago. But yeah, I wouldn't want my child to be a truck driver, or I wouldn't want this. I think even ourselves internally, as well as the public, was fairly negative around truck driving and around our industry. But I've seen that turn. I mean, when we do a lot of interviews, I've had a Volvo executive told me that they used to go to colleges to interview for engineers or accountants or whatever, and it was very difficult to have people and apply and be interested to work for a truck company. And he said that's just like turned over incredibly. Now they've got long lines, they've got people excited about things like connectivity, all these computers in the trucks, all the electrification, the automation, all these things that are right in front of us. And some of us are like, oh, that's tough, and this is challenging and so forth. But that's also bringing a lot of talent that's excited that would have never come into trucking before. And so I am really thrilled with that. I don't know where that fits in the, diversity inclusion, just like the creativeness, the excitement in the industry, but it's I think it's definitely part of it.
A lot of it has to do with Gen Z too, feeling like they really want to do something impactful and meaningful. And what better industry to be in than the trucking industry and moving freight? And like you said, with just the clean energies, or the clean energy technologies and automation and all the things that we have now to make the job safer for people, I do think it's a very appealing industry for people to get into.
All right. Well, we'll call that a public service announcement from Mike and Cristina on the industry.
I'm here for it. I'm here for it.
What's the kind of a one or two like big advice you would give to people around having a successful career and making a difference in trucking? So what kind of and maybe this is just whatever comes to mind for you.
Yeah. Read everything that you can. The way I learned the industry obviously was reading, and then just getting out on the road and talking to people, attending trade shows, maybe if that's something you don't normally do. Consider joining industry associations and some task force meetings and groups. I think that there's just a wealth of knowledge out there, and people in this industry really do want to share that knowledge to just make it a better place for everyone to work.
Fantastic. We'll close there. And I know if anybody wants to ask Cristina or I or anybody, I'm sure most of us are really open to sharing and helping you figure out what those different areas of opportunity are. So thanks for joining me, Cristina. It's been a lot of fun. Looking forward to seeing you at the next truck show.
Oh yeah, this has been great. Highlight of my day. So thank you so much for having me.
Freight Efficiency with NACFE's Mike Roth and Friends. If you enjoyed this podcast and want to support NACFE's work, please visit nacfe.org/support and click on the donate button. Thank you in advance.